I still remember the first time I picked up a worn Lincoln cent at a flea market stall. The edges soft from decades of pocket wear, but somehow brimming with stories. Today, we've got two pennies that crank curiosity up to 11, the 1983 and the 1985 Lincoln cents. You might be thinking, pennies? Really? But stick with me. These humble little coins have twists and rarities that turn spare change treasure hunts into full-blown adventures. By the end of this video, you'll not only know how to spot them in your pocket change, but you'll also see why collectors in their 40s and 50s are still buzzing about mint state specimens that fetch hundreds, even thousands of dollars at auction. Let's kick things off with a 1983 Lincoln cent, an underdog story that's part mint mistake, part detective puzzle. You see, 1983 was a strange year for the U.S. Mint. Rising copper costs led to the transition from the classic copper wash zinc planchets back to a nearly pure copper core. That switch planted the seeds of confusion and error, and where there's confusion, there's opportunity. Imagine a mint overwhelmed by new planchet specifications, churning out millions of coins, some of which didn't quite meet the new standards. Those anomalies are what makes certain 1983 cents coveted. Diving into the history, the Lincoln cent has been with us since 1909, celebrating Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. For most of the 20th century, the coin was 95% copper with a thin bronze surface, but as metal prices rose in the 70s and early 80s, the mint experimented with 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper coatings. By 1982, they'd fully embraced copper-plated zinc. In 1983, however, the mint reverted to a core copper content of about 99.2% to shore up dwindling copper stocks. That back and forth created a brief window where planchets didn't always meet specs, setting the stage for a few oddballs that slipped through quality control. So, what should you look for when hunting a rare 1983 cent? First, check the edge. Normal coins have a thin copper plating over a zinc interior, but error pieces may show uneven layers or flaking that reveals more zinc than expected. Next, examine the strike. Some 1983 cents were struck on leftover 1982 bronze planchets, giving them a slightly heavier feel and a richer, deeper tone when tapped on a hard surface. These 1982 bronze coins reuse planchets that should have been retired. If you hold one up to the light, you might notice a faint halo around Lincoln's silhouette where the plating was thinner. Finally, look for doubling, a sign of a worn die. A subtle ghost image around the date or the motto, "In God We Trust," can signal a double die error worth up to 5 figures in perfect mint state. Moving on to market values, you'll see that the current sweet spot for an error-free, copper-plated zinc 1983 cent in circulated condition is about 20 to 50 cents, hardly enough to break the piggy bank. But mint state examples blow that away. An MS65, that's perfect uncirculated with only the slightest marks visible under magnification, runs anywhere from $200 to $400 at dealers' catalogs. If you snag an MS67, rare enough that the grading services might see only a handful each year, you could be looking at $1,000 to $2,000. And for the absolute unicorn, say an MS68 or better with a major die break or a spectacularly distinct double die, you're talking 5, maybe even 6-figure prices in top auction houses. Beyond the numbers, there's a human story that makes the 1983 penny compelling. Take the collector who stumbled upon a dusty cardboard box in 2012, full of unsearched junk coins from a relative's estate sale. He flipped through the first few rolls expecting nothing but pocket money, then froze when he spotted a bright copper edge peeking through a stack of dull, plated zinc. That one find paid for his mortgage for a year. Tales like these keep seasoned collectors, and those just curious, scouring coin shops and eBay listings, hoping to be the next to unearth a gem. Of course, not all 1983 errors are created equal. Condition matters hugely. Think of circulated cents as character pieces, the ones that have changed hands, jingled in pockets, and absorbed the world's grit. They hold charm, but little monetary heft. If your 1983 penny has a soft sheen, faint scratches, or a bit of toning around the rim, you're comfortably in the $10 to $20 range at most. Once you hit uncirculated status, Know where on Lincoln's cheek or shoulder you cross the collector threshold. From there, every hairline scratch or mint mark anomaly can add $100 or more. Now, I'm sure some of you have that exact scenario on your mind. Hey, I found one that looks perfect, but what about those ones with the mint mark area messed up? Ah, yes, the infamous double die obverse. These are coins where the die itself had a double engraving, so every strike shows a faint second image. If you run your fingernail across the V in trust and feel two ridges instead of one, you've likely got a double die variety. They're scarce, perhaps only a dozen graded examples in the world, and auctions can push them into the 5 to 6-figure territory if the strike is bold and the surface is pristine. But mistakes aren't the only route to rarity. There's also the curious case of the near-date 1983 cent, where a die from 1982 was used long enough that some cents still bear a vestige of the old year in the recesses of the numeral, almost like a ghost date. They're subtle, often overlooked, and when authenticated, can command a premium at specialized coin shows. These little quirks are what keep the coin hunting community on its toes and conversations alive in online forums and monthly club meetings. As we wrap up our deep dive into the 1983 penny, remember that hunting these coins is as much about the thrill as the payoff. Whether you're a seasoned collector with a display case full of certified rarities or someone just shuffling rolled pennies at the grocery checkout, knowing what to look for changes every cent into a potential treasure. Keep an eye on the edge, check the plating, examine for die doubling, and above all, enjoy the hunt. In our next segment, we'll shift gears to the 1985 penny, another common year hiding its own share of surprises. So if you got a jar in a corner or a handful of cents jingling in your pocket, get ready. The hunt continues. And here we go. Just when you thought pennies couldn't surprise you anymore, the 1985 Lincoln cent steps into the spotlight. It might look like every other penny you've ever handled, a familiar copper red glow, Lincoln's profile greeting you with that timeless dignity. But scratch beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, and you'll find a subtle drama playing out in small details that send seasoned collectors into a frenzy. Let's rewind to the mid-1980s. The United States was in the midst of heavy coinage demands. Vending machines, payphones, toll booths, they all gobbled up change by the millions every single day. The U.S. Mint at Philadelphia was grinding out Lincoln cents by the truckload, aiming for efficiency. Yet in that push for quantity, quality control sometimes took the occasional nap, spawning intriguing anomalies. The 1985 penny story hinges on two main twists: plating inconsistencies and the elusive double die reverse. First, the plating story. Remember how 1982 saw the big switch to zinc cores with a thin copper plating? By 85, that process was routine, but not foolproof. The plating on most cents is only about 0.0005 inches thick, thinner than a human hair. So even a tiny hiccup in the plating bath or a small scratch on the planchet can lead to a flake or two missing. Some 1985 cents show what we call plating voids, patches where the copper layer didn't adhere properly and the grayish zinc beneath peeks through. In circulated pieces, you might see a tiny spot on Lincoln's ear or the date where the copper has chipped off. Casual pocket change roll hunters often toss those aside, not realizing that collectors prize them, especially when the voids form strange patterns or reveal partial doubling underneath. But let's raise the stakes a bit further: the double die reverse. Unlike the 1983 double die obverse that whispers its presence, the 85 reverse variety can be a bit sneaky until you know what to look for. Flip the coin to the back and scan the words 1 cent and e pluribus unum. If you see a slight shadow or a second, fainter impression offset by a hair's breadth, congratulations. You may hold one of the rarest Lincoln penny varieties of the 20th century. Experts estimate fewer than 50 genuine examples exist graded above MS65, and even fewer in MS66 or better. When one of these surfaces at a major auction, bids often sprint past $10,000, sometimes doubling that for the absolute top-tier, museum-quality strikes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely most 85 cents are just pennies. And you'd be right. Over 4.4 billion were minted that year. In circulated condition, a typical 1985 zinc cord penny trade for face value plus a smidge. Think a dime or two if it's an unremarkable shape. But what transforms a forgettable copper disc into a prized rarity is primarily condition and error type. Let's break down the tiers. Circulated common, face value to 10 cents. Surface wear, scratches, and faded luster. Uncirculated copper-plated zinc, MS60 to MS63, 25 cents to $1.50. Full luster, minor contact marks. High mint state, MS64 to MS65, $2 to $10. Sharp strike, vibrant color, only a few tiny bag marks. Premium quality, MS66 plus, $15 to $50. Exceptional surfaces, strong strike, near perfect edges. Error and variety specimens, from $100 for mild plating voids to $10,000 plus for top-graded double die reverse. When you're hunting 1985 cents in circulation, pay special attention to color. The newer zinc cord pennies often have a paler reddish-brown hue compared to older bronze examples. A bright, red-brown 1985 cent that looks straight from the mint in your hand, even if lightly circulated, might command a premium from dealers. And of course, never underestimate the power of a quick magnifier check on the reverse. Lightly tilt the coin under good lighting and watch for glints of doubled lettering around the wreath and motto. Beyond plating and doubling, there's a charming footnote in the 1985 story, the so-called near-date bleed-throughs. Just like the 83 ghost date survivors, a few 1985 cents were struck with worn dies that still bore faint remnants of the previous year's numerals. On these oddballs, you might spot a shadow of the 8 slightly overlapping the 5, or small burrs that give the date an edgy, three-dimensional look. Collectors sometimes call these re-engraving clues, though in truth, they're simply the byproducts of a die's life cycle. They're subtle, and a dealer once dismissed one as machine grease, until photographers captured the ghost date in macro, and suddenly a few $100 coins shot into the four-figure league. Of course, listener, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the human angle. Back in 2017, at a regional coin show in Ohio, a young collector named Sarah was combing through a dealer's stockpile of common pennies. She was on the hunt for a clean 1984 for her date set album when she flipped a roll and found a 1985 with a strange dull patch over Lincoln's shoulder. Assuming it was just a scuff, she nearly passed it by, until a friend with a loop flagged it as a rare plating void. Sarah sold it days later for $350 and used the money to pay for her brother's college books. Stories like hers remind us that every coin tells a tale, not just of metal and mintages, but of personal triumphs and happy accidents. Let's pull back and look at the market today. With online platforms connecting collectors worldwide, even a neat find from spare change can turn into a big payday. Auction houses like Heritage and Stack's Bowers see dozens of 1985 error cents each year, but the showstoppers, the MS66 plus double die reverses, still draw only a handful of bidders. In 2024, one of those ghosts fetched over $12,000 in Philadelphia after a heated bidding war that lasted nearly 20 minutes. Meanwhile, toned or proof-like specimens, where the coin's surface reflects light in mirror-like flashes, regularly trade for $100 to $300 in high mint state. And let's not forget proof coins. Those come straight from the mint's proof sets, with satin finishes and deep mirrors. A pristine 1985 proof cent in PR6A condition can be worth $200 or more to date set completists. As with the 83 penny, condition reigns supreme. Circulated enthusiasts might chase rich, untouched surfaces with original mint luster peeking through nooks and crannies. Uncirculated junkyard hunters will pay a small premium for red-brown survivors in bag-fresh quality, perfect for registry sets. And anyone with an eye for typographical quirks or plating anomalies can find a niche that turns pocket change into collectible art. So next time you hear that familiar clink of pennies on the counter, pause for a moment. Consider the journey each one took, from molten metal to mint press to pocket, and perhaps, one day, your collection. And if you spot a glint, a slight doubling, or the faintest ghost of a date, you'll know you've struck something truly special. Happy hunting, and may your pockets and your displays always hold a treasure or two.